Well, welcome and thank you for joining me tonight. Our topic on the podcast Tips with Rob Greenlee show is unleashing your authentic self. And I have a terrific guest, YouTuber and podcaster, Ashley Berges. And this is another terrific example of the convergence strategy of audio and video podcasting. And I think in episode 26 here of the show, we're going to really be able to unpack this a little bit. We're going to also cover Ashley's path on YouTube and her work there to achieve. Now she's got her silver plaque of 100,000 plus subscribers to her YouTube channel, and that goes along with her millions of views that she's had that we're all striving for on YouTube and creating content. And she also has an audio podcast too, so I guess that shouldn't be too much of a surprise if she's a convergence kind of strategist of sorts. And we're going to also talk about her work with video shorts and reels, and which is on top of mind right now for a lot of folks out there. And I also wanted to explore the power of trying to develop your authentic voice in creating your content, and how that might manifest itself. I think Ashley's a terrific kind of person to talk to about those concepts, and how you might be able to manifest yourself and how you present yourself to inspire others to be more authentic and to have that type of relationship with your particular viewer community or listener community that you have. And it is, as we all know, very difficult now to build trust in the world right now. So these are skills that I think are very, very, very much valued. And I think increasingly we're seeing those skills valued. So this conversation tonight will hopefully unpack some of that. And really, just to let you know, Ashley's core purpose is to help people cope in difficult situations in their lives, and to provide some guidance and understanding to really. And this could help you have a healthier and better relationship with your own community that you're building in your own personal life. And so the purpose of this show is really to share those tips for you beyond just kind of the technical aspects of doing a podcast that StreamYard definitely has here. And I also want to remind everybody to participate in the live Q&A toward the end of the show, where you can ask questions of Ashley and we can talk about these topics specific to what your particular questions are. Just type the letter Q at the beginning of the question, and I'll add it to the queue that's available for us to answer at the end of the show. And I'm going to have a StreamYard giveaway at the end as well. So enter the hashtag #TheYard into the comment field of your preferred listening platform. And that'll get you entered into the giveaway at the end. And it's for you can see it behind me. It's the StreamYard mug and Puddles the duck. So go ahead and jump in there and type in hashtag #TheYard, and that'll get you entered into it magically across the interwebs into a little kind of aggregation tool that StreamYard has called the StreamYard.com/giveaway tool. And it basically aggregates all those hashtags into an algorithm that randomly generates a winner. So we will do that towards the end of the program as well. So let me bring Ashley Berges up to the stage, and we can start this conversation with Ashley. And let's see if we can get her actually to show up on the screen. There we go. Ashley, thank you so much for joining me tonight. It's great to have you here on the show. You're a YouTuber, life coach, therapist, podcaster with a rich background as a nationally syndicated radio show host, as well as a creator of Live Your True Life Institute and the author of the 10-Day Challenge to Live Your True Life. I think that's the common theme here, Ashley, is that you want to help people live their true life. I think, but you're also the host of what's a video series called Celebrity Perspectives on Amazon Prime. I think that was something that you did a few years ago, but really helping people find their their true path in life. And so, as the title of this episode communicates, we're going to unleash your authentic self tonight on this program. So, Ashley, thank you for joining me.
Hey, Rob, thank you so much for having me on. Love the show. So thank you for having me tonight.
Yeah. So let's just go ahead and start out at the very beginning. I mean, how long have you been online creating content on places like YouTube and things like that? And what kind of, at a broad stroke, if you look at the past and what you've done, what has that journey been for you, and what does that mean to you, and how much impact do you think you've had on the world? I know that's a lot of questions, but if you can kind of unpack that in a broad sense, that would be great.
Great questions. I think for everybody out there that's watching, listening, as a content creator, you go back and you go, wow, I've been doing this for a long time, right? So whatever it is, if you're on YouTube, if you're on Facebook, if you're on Instagram, whether you have a podcast or a radio show, you've been doing it for a long time, and it's really important to you, and you're putting out that content. And so it's been a long time. I started on the radio back in 2012 and been on the radio for years and years. And then actually eventually, started that podcast and listened, took some knowledge from you as well on the podcast concept, Rob. And so I was really good about that. And so really followed that and really believe in the podcast and the formation of that. And then, just kept putting stuff out on YouTube, started with YouTube eventually, put some stuff out there, really got some good accolades. Some videos really hit really hard with people. And I felt like the videos that really connected with people are when you're really being direct. And it was really neat. A lot of Facebook content, a lot of Instagram content. And well, basically we put content out, 5, even 6 days a week. So we're constantly doing it. So I don't know if that helps, but it's being consistent, putting it out there. Some things really hit, some things don't. And it's just trying to figure out what that is and what people are really looking for.
Yeah, I think that is really key, is to always kind of evolve what you're doing. And I'm sure that you've spent a lot of time trying new things, trying new formats, trying all sorts of things to see what's going to resonate with your audience. And yeah, how many times have you kind of redone what you do, or redo your artwork and played around with thumbnails and stuff like that? I mean, has that been kind of like a painful journey? Because I think for most creators, it's a pretty painful process. But
it's hard because when you're really close to it, right? When you're really
Yeah.
close to the content, like anything, right? In life, if you're really close to a relationship, if you're married in a relationship, you're really close to your best friends, it's really hard to really step back and see the situation clearly. And with content creation, it's the same thing. You have it in your head how people are going to find it or what they're looking for, but that could be completely different. It could be completely sideways. And so it can be really hard. And what I suggest is that if you can take a step back, like you create it and you say, okay, now how do we define this? How do we package this? Because the packaging is a lot of the strategy alone. And I'm going to tell you, I haven't completely mastered that at all. I'm still walking through that. I look at some of these YouTubers, you're at 1 million, 5 million, 10 million subscribers. Wow, it's amazing. But I feel like they finally get in the rhythm and they understand. And so I'm still processing, I'm still learning, but I've realized if you have somebody that you can, say, hey, look at this or watch this, or, what does this say to you? What does this convey to you? Or what's the image? And sometimes I feel like I'm really on point. And then other times, maybe there's somebody, outside of your own eyes that can really help you get some perspective.
Yeah, because I think I've seen you kind of play around with shorts and reels and things like that, and start really getting into transitions and trying to kind of use text on the screen a lot, and really kind of play around with that model. I don't think in the early days of what you were doing, you were doing as much of that. I think it was more just kind of like straight up your presentation about whatever theme or topic that you have, but you're playing around with more kind of stimulating videos as well. So is that kind of
For sure, you nailed it. I mean,
right,
in the beginning,
right.
it was just like content. It was like, let's get the content out, let's put it out there as fast as we can. Let's get it out there. And some of that content did great. I mean, some of the long form stuff that we have on YouTube, back in the day,
Mhm.
like an hour, couple hours. I mean, really did amazing. I don't know if you'd want to do that now, but now we're trying to we're trying to be a little more interesting, for the eye. because I know that, some people are really great about listening to content and taking it in. Some of us are big podcast followers. And so it's a podcast is great. The content's great. You can work out, you can drive, you can do whatever. But then there's a lot of other folks that need more of that, visual stimulation. And also maybe it helps sometimes to tell the story. And that's what we're trying to do. Sometimes it can be time consuming, and I know, my editor, George, would probably have to say that it is somewhat time consuming, but trying to add that B-roll content in that tells that kind of tells the story of, if you're watching this video, why you're watching the video and what you're going through. And that's what we're trying to go for as much as possible, as much time as we have to do it, because I think that helps. And I also think that when we, watch content that's really connected and we feel connected to it and it's telling us a story, but we're also connecting with visuals, it can be very helpful as well.
Yeah, and I think you've been playing around with trying to do radio as well. So, I mean, that's your background. So you're kind of like this perfect kind of test bed for all the different types of media that's out there. I mean, I can't think of anybody else that I've known over the years has played around with so many different formats and so many different ways of creating content and putting it out there, hosting a live talk show on a Dallas radio station, and just, I mean, I've done a lot of this stuff too, but I certainly haven't done as much video as you have over many, many years. And it's interesting that you took that path. I mean, I sense in the early days when I was working with you, when I was working for Spreaker, that the whole audio side was your primary focus, stuff. But then you started to kind of move more towards the video side. And that really kind of, I think you became over a period of time, you became more of a video creator. And I think that's what really stands out for me, is that I think in the early days, you really stood out to me as being a primarily, I think you evolved into being primarily a video creator. And that's what was interesting about what your journey has been, from what I've seen anyway.
You're very right, because when we first met, I was just like solid radio, Rob. Remember, you were like,
Yeah.
"Have you thought about doing a podcast? I mean, I know you're on these radio
Yeah.
stations and you're doing this radio station. That's great. You got that 1 hour show, you got that 2 hour show, and that's awesome. But think about doing a podcast and putting it out there. Your content's evergreen and getting it out there. You and I had these conversations. I'm like, I don't know. Remember, and then I started the podcast, and so we got the podcast. And then you're right, because there was the podcast there, which is great because radio is radio. And the thing with content is, radio is heard by the folks that are listening to the radio stations, which is great. But that person that's listening to the radio station, whether it's in Phoenix or, Fort Lauderdale or Dallas, Texas, or Austin or wherever that is not the same person listening to the podcast like on Spreaker. So then, you were with Spreaker and I jumped on board with Spreaker, and, my podcast is held on Spreaker, it has been there for forever.
Right.
And so, yeah, I went that way. And then it's like, you kind of start going that direction. And then you're like, oh, okay. Huh. Yeah. So content can be a lot more bite size. Okay. That, the show was like 2 hours and you had a 1 hour show. Then you did the podcast. So it was like 44 minutes. Then you start going to the YouTube and you go, okay, well, the podcasters, the people that are going to listen to my podcast are probably not going to be looking at YouTube. And they're certainly probably not going to be looking at my Facebook. And I find that, and then it's like, and then you're trying to figure out what is the perfect morsel for each kind of grouping, for each layer. So it's like, yeah, you have your podcast where you can go really the radio, and it's even funny with radio and podcasting, right? Because with radio, it's like we're constantly each, at the end of each one, we're wrapping it up. Stay tuned. Don't change the channel. Don't, stay on the radio, and then you start back up, in the next segment, it's like, hey, welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives. And I'm your host, Ashley Berges. We've been talking about this, and then the podcast, you can just go straight forward with it. And then I find like the smaller bits, it's like, you're getting just to the point. And so like YouTube, it's like, I started trying to whittle it down more because I realized that I had started with this huge long form content. And now I need to say it in a lot shorter period of time. And so it's very interesting. And as you whittle down to video too, it's just your storytelling changes a lot. And the way that you present things changes a lot. And you got to get down to the brass tacks pretty quick, And so you're right. It's an interesting kind of combination, you would say, of content.
Yeah, and I think we're seeing this kind of change from the standpoint of the trends are going long and short at the same time, and that's got to drive you crazy because if you look at what a lot of the big platforms are doing, I think what we're starting to even see on YouTube is that the long form content is being rewarded more based right, and the short form content or the reels and stuff are not getting monetized quite as much.
Mhm.
And that's a tension that exists in the medium that is a little bit of a disincentive to create short form content if you look long term, where it's maybe encouraging people to create longer form content as we look to the future. But I thought it was interesting too, and that a platform like Twitter X has announced this past week, and I want to put this out to the community too, that they are launching a smart TV app for Roku and a lot of the smart TVs. So they're going to be trying to compete directly with YouTube. And this program is being watched live on Twitter X right now. So this content will be available in a TV experience very soon. I don't know if that's been released yet fully. I did see it announced, but you're starting to see this kind of blending of long and short form content. And if you think about Twitter started out with 140 characters and it went to 280. And then it went to, when Elon took over, it went to, I don't know how many, like 5 or 10,000 words or something like that.
Wow.
And long form video and all sorts of stuff. So we're seeing this tension that's happening, that's pulling in both directions, and it's going to drive content creators bat crazy. And that's a little bit of why this kind of convergent strategy that I'm talking about on this program is important, because you can go in and create one piece of content, but that content needs to be formatted in a way that can be cut up and be used in a variety of different ways, and that can be a little tricky. So have you played around with that? I know that you've been very specific in creating different forms of content for each of these mediums, and that's got to be a kind of a battle that's frustrating.
It really is kind of the way that I whittle it down, and it's not obviously there's I don't know. This is the way I'm doing it. Doesn't mean it's right
Right.
or wrong, but it's an idea, right? So I develop an entire concept around whatever that is, and then I usually do like the long form radio show around it. So the long form radio show, you're at an hour or whatever you're at now. I don't do a 2-hour show anymore. Then you kind of whittle that down to a shorter podcast. Then you take and you're like, okay, what are the nuggets that I would have? Let's say if I was going to do an 8-minute, 9-minute video on YouTube. And then it's
Mhm.
like, okay, so then how do you take that? Because some people are going to watch the 9-minute video, and then some people are going to be like, oh, hell no. 9 minutes?
Right.
And I don't have time for 9 minutes. So then you kind of have to whittle that down. But then there's that weird kind of gray area of you have the 9-minute show, but then who's going to really watch like a 5-minute show? But then a lot of people are going to look at maybe a 48-second,
Right.
50-second, 55-second snippet, but you can't really get deep in that snippet. Okay.
Well, that's
And
the
so,
core of the challenge, right? Ashley,
yeah,
is
it's like,
is
what do
that,
you do?
you know, I mean, at least on the video side, you can communicate a lot more with your facial expressions and graphics that you can bring up on the screen, kind of like. And I haven't done this yet, but I wanted to show your website. Speaking of pulling up graphics up on the screen, um, what that looks like, and kind of what you're doing off of this site.
Mhm.
And I know you've had this site for a long time, but
We're
I
actually
think you.
rebranding it. We're actually
Oh,
in the
you
process
are.
of rebranding.
Oh,
So
you are.
it's like our
Okay.
fourth generation, fifth generational rebrand coming up. And by the way, it takes way longer than you ever expect. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, of
But
course.
it will be different. But we've had that kind of look for a while, and now we're kind of going for a different look. But it probably won't be up for like another month. But anyway, yes, that definitely is the current site right now.
Yeah, the key takeaway for me when I look at your site right now, and this gets back to kind of the Uber trends that I'm seeing in the content community right now, is this concept of membership community, right? And it seems like a lot of creators. I was at the National Association of Broadcasters event just a couple weeks ago, and I was around a bunch of online content creators, and everybody's a buzz about creating your own private community, and be able to publish your own content up to that community, and to build that kind of loyalty layer to what you're doing, instead of just putting things out and hoping that the YouTube will drive attention to you, you're basically trying to establish relationships with your audience, right? And build that deeper connection. And it also maybe is a way to combat some of these issues around content moderation and things like that if you can have a private community. So are you playing around with that in a significant way, Ashley?
We have a good community. I mean, a lot of people that are, members are, it's free membership. So a lot of people get in there, and it's
Okay.
content that we necessarily, some of it's not free, but the first tier is free, and so we have a lot of content in there. And some of the content I don't have on YouTube, and the reason for that is there is some content that I wanted to have separate as a membership site. And now we do have membership options on the YouTube channel. So people can become a member there too. So but prior to kind of doing that, we started this. And then what I want to do from this members is to be able to have, to do actually some group sessions off that and stuff like that, be able to do some group coaching sessions and things that are kind of like maybe like an additive to that membership,
Mhm.
which I haven't really been able to figure out how you really jumpstart that on the YouTube platform. We have members, but we have like kind of the member videos that are separate from the other videos. And the member videos on YouTube are really kind of deep dive videos. They're a lot longer. They're a lot deeper. They're taking a situation,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
really deep diving into it. And it's not like the red flags or the this. It's like, hey, let's take this big situation here, and then let's deconstruct it. Then how do we deal with it? So it's that kind of deeper dive that might be 25 minutes long, and you necessarily don't want to get dinged on on YouTube for not having as many people that watch it all the way through, because it's a long video. I mean, it has to be somebody that's really going through this, that really needs that help to watch that video. And so that's kind of what we do with the members. But online, we have our membership site, and it's nice because we have most of our video housed there, and then additional video that's not in other places that we offer for free.
Yeah, and you've had, kind of like, staff assistants and people that help you in your company doing all these things too, right? It's not like you're, entirely a solo act, even though there's a lot of content creators out there that like to do everything, right, themselves. But I'm sure you went through that part of your career as well, right?
Well, that and honestly, it's like you get like a solid group and you stick with it. My group is a solid, and I mean, like we have all people that are exterior, um, that do some of our website stuff and everything like that. But when it comes to like the core group, it's like three of us, and it's us.
Yeah.
It's George, Rhonda, and me, and then we have all the other stuff kind of happening in the background as well. But yeah, I mean, and it's hard too because when you're trying to do it all, and I understand that. I mean, it's a grassroots effort. It's not. There are a lot of people out there that have done really well, very successful, have a huge team. They don't, I mean, they just basically think of something and it comes to fruition. They put it out there. You got your Tony Robbins and folks like that at that level where they have these huge teams, which is amazing. It's phenomenal. But I think in the process of being a content creator, we have to start somewhere. And a lot of times the buck stops here. And then you find some folks that you can really work with that sees the vision, or at least connects with your vision, or at least understand where you're going from and where you're coming from, and then can understand what you're trying to say. And I think that alone is worth a lot, because I think if you can find someone that gets what you're saying and also respects what you're doing, that's half the battle.
Yeah, and I know that you've been really kind of a multimedia creator too. I mean, doing a TV show for Amazon Prime and writing books and doing radio and doing podcasts and doing YouTube and stuff like that. I mean, that's a lot. Do you think that's the key to success now? Is to be able to be a multimedia content creator?
I think, unfortunately, I mean, some people want to focus on one thing, and I get it. But again, we're kind of seeing like, and I know we're not talking politically or whatever, but the whole TikTok situation. I have some clients that are huge TikTokers, content creators. They're in the millions of followers, and that's kind of scary in its own right. If one platform was to be taken out, that's a situation. And I don't think you want to put all your eggs in one basket. I also feel like people are going to connect with you on the platform that they feel most comfortable with. So they're not, if they don't ever have Facebook, they're never going to see your content on Facebook. If they don't look at Instagram, they're never going to see your content on Instagram. If they're not a YouTuber. So I think if you want to get the word out of what you're doing, or at least just educate or help, I think you got to really kind of cover all the bases. And that can be challenging. And then the thing is that people question, well, do I put the same content out on all of it? Or do I put different content out? And I think that's another question you have to think about too, because sometimes I'll put different content out, but then there's some content that we put on certain things that we can't put out on YouTube, or that we can't, just because it doesn't facilitate that. Like a meme, or or a quote, or something that we think is very profound in that moment, or something just absolutely hilarious can go on something. And I think that you're always constantly, like radio and podcasts, most of those people that listen to the radio don't listen to podcasts. Some of them do, but most of them don't. And I've realized it's kind of like figuring out, if I want to catch the most people and communicate with the most people and help the most people, I've got to at least cover these bases.
Yeah. And I think that is one of the core problems. I don't know if it's problems, but it's a challenge for the radio industry, is to navigate these waters. And I think that they have been struggling with this, of trying to make content that works on the radio and as a podcast. And I think you were kind of an early example of how you struggled with that. It's like what you mentioned earlier, is that you're always teasing your audience on the radio to keep listening and to coming up next. And there's all these, but that's not the format for a podcast, right? So you wind up having to create that show over there, and then you do a bunch of editing to it, right? Is that kind of what your process has been?
Well, and sometimes with the radio goes, you go to the studio and you do it live, or you do the Comrex, setup, or the digital Comrex setup, and then you turn around and you go, you record the radio show. Sometimes that radio show gets cut up and it becomes becomes that, or sometimes not at all. Sometimes you go, wow, it took me so long to get from point A to point B on that, or let's slim this down, or let's add this content to it, or wait, and then you'll be like, okay, now my podcast is gonna be completely different from the radio show, so sometimes you end up like doing, and sometimes you end up like kind of building it over and over again, and like sometimes with long videos, I'm like, no, I don't want to cut that into short videos. Or I can't cut that into short videos, or yeah, that lends itself to be, or okay, now I have to reshoot these videos. So like I'll take these 6 nuggets out of this long form video, and I'll shoot these separately as 1 minute shoot, as 1 minute, shorts. But it's good because sometimes you can't really cut anything out. And so I know some people say, oh, their bread and butter is, oh, I know exactly, I can pausation, I can do this, and then create these. But I think it also has to be presented in a way where it's authentic, right? I mean, you have to feel that. It has to be an authentic connection. It can't be like, oh, I'm just doing all this and cutting all this stuff up. I think that, when you're specifically giving certain content in small doses, I think it has to be direct and to the point. And sometimes that can be hard to be done and taken from a longer form video. And sometimes they just have to stand alone. And some people like one way that you present something, and some people like another way. And some people you like a way better presenting something. Sometimes we don't want to be that short, and other times you're kind of like, and other times you kind of like to be more, not long-winded, but, more in depth. And so it kind of depends on what lends best to your personality, and also what lends best to your content. And that can be challenging too.
Yeah, that's a terrific segue, really, to where I wanted to take the conversation next. Thank you for doing that unconsciously, I'm sure. But this whole concept of the authentic self, right, is something that I definitely have picked up from you. That's kind of really your core message. I mean, if you look at this concept of living your true life, right, it is also corollary to this concept of being authentic in your life and being who you are to the world around you, and the power of that, right? And being honest with others, and being truthful, and being straightforward. And how important is that as you think about being a content creator, and as we move into this new era, like I mentioned earlier, leading into the show, this lack of trust that we're seeing in the world, and being authentic, it's a proven concept to enabling and building and creating trust. And is it really even enough now to even be authentic and accomplish that? But I'm just curious what you think about that when it comes to being a content creator.
And that's one of the biggest, because I think a lot of times it's hard. You look at some content creators and you're like, wow, look at all these followers, look at all these subscribers, what have you. And that's great. But I think you have to just be authentic about what you want to, the direction you want to go, who you are, the content that you want to create, the belief system and the understanding that you have. And it's going to come through because I do think, yes, you're right. Anybody can be anybody, but it's like if you come to the table and you're addressing what you know and what you're connected to and what you generally care about, I think it comes through. I mean, it's hard nowadays because there are some people that, are very genuine and there's some people that maybe not so genuine. But at the same point, it's like trying to just focus on, and that's the thing that's hard, is that when you are content creating, the last thing you want to do, and one of the hardest things that, to not do, is to compare yourself. You sit there and you look at people with, Mr. Beast and all these people that have all these
Mhm.
followers and these subscribers. And, I mean, it's insane. And you can get really down on yourself pretty quick, I mean, it's like, oh, you get down on yourself pretty quick, but you have to really think about it and say, okay, hey, yeah, I get it. This person's been doing this. They have this content. And then you also have to be realistic with your content
Yeah.
as far as, there's certain content that's going to garnish more subscribers just because it's interesting. Like if I'm playing pranks or if I'm giving away money or if I'm doing things like that, it might garnish more people to follow. Now, if I'm talking about some of the deeper stuff, some of the more harder things, some of the more challenging things, or some of the more niche things, it
Right.
might not be as many. So we have to be kind of honest about that. But then we also, I think the biggest thing is being authentic as far as not looking at what everybody else is doing. Think about, what do I really want to focus on? How do I polish that up? And then how do I put it out there? And you know what? And trying to basically not to say that you don't look at everybody's stuff, but kind of you don't look at everybody's stuff and you just kind of focus on what you need to do.
Yeah, it does seem like that there's this element of this key word that I use at the beginning of the show is authentic self, and I think that that is a very loaded term or a phrase to apply, and I can apply it even to this show that I've been doing. I'm at 26 episodes now. I mean, I haven't been doing this show a long time, but long enough to start to feel like I'm kind of finding my groove here to some degree of being able to speak to this audience on this topic and to be able to use the tools and to be able to talk in a way that is more true to me. I think when I started this series, I was a little bit more stilted because I was maybe a little unsure about what my pathway was here and how I was talking to this audience and how I was, trying to build community. And that's a big thing that's happened with this show is that there's a core group of people that come back every week and watch what I'm up to in the next episode. And I think over time I've grown a little bit more kind of confident with the content that I'm doing here. And I'm sure that was your journey to some degree too, is as you speak to your audience. And this even goes beyond just our individual ability to feel confident on microphone. I think it gets back to, how we think during a show and how confident that we are. And I know this is something that I didn't have when I was young. I didn't have a lot of confidence to speak in front of really anyone. I was a competitive basketball player, and my expression when I was younger was more physical than it was verbally. So this whole evolution of me getting behind a microphone and being a presenter and things like that is more of a modern phenomenon for me, and it's really kind of uh, I've really tried to become more authentic, and I think I've noticed that in you as well. So.
And Rob, I get it. It's like you go through the process, and you're one of the pioneers of podcasting. So you in content creation, and I think in the beginning, and that's the thing. It's like I kind of see it like as it's like an evolution. It's like in the beginning when you start creating content, you're super. At least from my experience, you're just super, super authentic. You're super in your place. You're not you're not thinking about anything. You're not trying to make it sound better. You're just putting it out there. And then there comes a
Right.
time when you kind of polish it up, and then you
Right.
polish it up a little more, polish it. And then you go, wait a second, now I'm kind of fraying away from just giving out the information. I need to keep it polished, but just give out that information. And so trying to stay there is the best thing, is just like giving out the right information, giving out the right content at the same time, um, you know, polishing it authentically, being ourselves. Um, I think that's and I think everybody has like this unique style about them. And I think if we can resonate with that unique style, connect with our unique style, understand what that unique style is, I think that's also a connection to you. And being able to use your past and being able to use your life and being able to use your own experiences. And obviously I never talk about any clients, and I never, but I can use, generalizations of clients' experiences sometimes in some of this video content. And I've had clients ask me directly, please do some videos on me, create videos based on my life. I'm like, can you please sign this for me? But and I have to some degree with some clients, because they're like, I want you to tell my story basically and what I've dealt with, and I can't do it. I don't have access to this, or I don't want to do this, but I want, what I went through to go out there. And so in that case, it's really cool. But it's really about being authentic to what you know. And I think that's what's so important, is just staying, and not to just, I guess some people say it's staying in their lane, but it's like, get in there and really feel what that is. And some people say, well, a lot of people talk about the same thing over and over again, but I think all in all, it's like finding that space and feeling confident in that, and then creating that content, and then maybe ebbing and flowing a little bit and changing and augmenting a little bit. But also, I think you have to also be true uh to the direction you had in the very beginning. And that can be hard too, because some people might say, oh, well, I feel like I'm beating, I feel like I keep beating this drum over and over again. And then that's where you have to really kind of dig deep, I think, to really think about your original content and then where you're going from there.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely agree with that. And if I think back to my own experience of being a competitive athlete, I think that there's some things that I learned from that, that apply to this too. And it's this concept of practice, 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 right? It's a practice, process that you have to go through to get good at anything, right? And if you repeat over and over and over again, this is what I did for many years with my radio show too. I did that for 7 years, as is just do it over and over again. The first couple of episodes that I did were pretty bad. Actually, they're still available to be heard. If you go to robgreenlee.com and go to the Web Talk archive, at the top of the page, you can actually go back to 1999 and hear the very first radio show episode that I ever did, in a studio up in the Seattle, Washington market. And I had 3 people in the studio with me. I had a couple of friends, and that we came in every Saturday morning and just had fun on the air. We made a lot of mistakes. We had a lot of fun. I was a horrible host, but I got better, right? I brought in all these people to kind of fill in for me, right? So I couldn't hold a show by myself. I mean, that was impossible back then. I had no experience with doing media. So it was really kind of, building a team around me, kind of like what you've done as well, that can contribute, some humor, some context, some content that maybe I can't come up with. So I had like a couple of different characters. I had one guy that I called Crash Test Mark, and he would come in, since this show was about technology. He would come in and talk about the latest thing that he did every week, that crashed his computer.
Oh,
So
God.
that was his shtick on my show, right? And then I had another guy that come in to talk about, some other aspect of his stumbling through technology and things like that. And then I would bring on people from like Microsoft and Symantec, and to talk about more serious topics. But it was just kind of this variety show of trying to get help around my program, and to shore me up as a content creator as I got better. And so you kind of have to take things with a pace without having an expectation that's so high that you're never going to meet that in a short period of time. So I think you have to pace yourself and realize that unless you have uncanny, unbelievable talent, it's not going to be always easy, right?
And you never know what you're going to stumble into. I remember the first radio show. I can remember like it was yesterday. I think it was May 5th, 2012, I think. And I had asked a friend of mine, James Rose from Fox News, to be on the show with me. And he was like, yeah, sure, this is great. He's like, I think that Cumulus has affiliation with Fox. And so I definitely know that my producer will be cool with that. So we get in the studio and we get there in the board up and we're talking. And he goes, yeah, we all still have that deal with Fox. And he's like, we never had a deal with Fox. It's ABC. And he's like, what? He's like, ABC, we're about 5 minutes away from starting. Okay. Y'all ready? And I was like, oh, Jesus.
There's no Fox. Yeah.
I was like, oh. And he's like, okay. So we sat down and it was great. And I interviewed him on some stuff and very interesting. And it was funny because there was a part in my third segment where he wasn't making any eye contact with me. He was actually not even looking at me. And I was like, okay, it is what it is. So at the end of the show, I was like, what was going on? He goes, actually, Ashley, he goes, you were doing so great. I didn't want to screw you up. He goes, I didn't want to like screw you up. He goes, I was really taken aback. He goes, I thought this was going to be a shit show. And I thought literally after this, we were going to end up going to the restaurant and, and you were going to have several wines and we were going to talk about how horrible this was. And so it all went really well, but it was funny because at the beginning, not having the affiliation, and it was kind of it was like one thing after another, but it was interesting, but it taught me a lot. And I also learned too, is like, you can get some great people on the show, but sometimes you will determine somebody that you think is going to be a great person to be on the show and they're not. Like I had this guy and I'm not going to talk about names, but he's been on all these shows. I mean, even Oprah, for God's sakes, you know what I mean? And I was like trying to get him to give some nuggets of wisdom, on the radio, and he wouldn't. He wanted everybody to buy his book. Like everything I asked him was always buy the book. And I realized, you gotta roll with that. But and then when you enter into different content creation, it's like you're a fish out of water. It's like, oh my God, now I have to learn this. Like Instagram was interesting learning, it's like, what do people, and it's hard because sometimes, you really want to go in depth with things and it's hard. And sometimes the things that you think are interesting, maybe, I don't know. But it's interesting. And I think we've all had a learning curve, and I've definitely, had a learning curve with some content creation. But yeah, and I understand what you're saying. And then when you go back to it and you listen to those shows, and one of the things that I'll tell everybody, listen to your voice. Definitely listen. People go, oh, I hate listening to my voice, or you can't be like that. You got to listen to it. Because I think, you got to be able to listen to it. You got to be able to laugh, and you got to be able to be like, I can't believe I said that, but it's good to be able to laugh at that stuff because I think it's just, it's authentic. It's human. And I also think that the funny parts on things sometimes are the things that really are those unique pieces are really the cool little nuggets too. And it shows your personality. And I think it shows your authentic, like, I was about to pull the dog up in here. He was all over the place here earlier. And I was like, he just left. I mean, he was making all kinds of noise and I'll put him on video. I was going to put him on video. But I think, being honest like that and doing that, you're not hiding what's happening. You're just like, hey, this is what's going on, and,
Right.
And I like to see that's what really connects with me. It's not showing me the big vacations. It's not showing me the yacht. It's not showing me the champagne. It's none of that. It's like showing me real life stuff, connecting with that. And when I see that in content, it makes me go, that's pretty cool. I get that. And I feel more confident and more connected with that content creator than if I feel like I'm just seeing this entire image that I'm supposed to believe, because I think we need to get away from image. I think it needs to be more like who we are. But again, some people are living behind that veil of image, but I think a lot of people are seeing through it, like you were talking about earlier, Rob.
Yeah, and I think we're even seeing this happen even with the biggest creator on YouTube. Mr. Beast has put out here recently, I don't know if you've heard this, Ashley, but he's made public statements that he is really disgusted by his content.
Oh, really?
Yes, he has put that out, and he's like saying, don't follow me because I made mistakes and I'm making mistakes, and I'm going to change. And so it's really interesting what's happening on this, and he keeps using these terms like, I need to be more authentic, I need to be more real, I need to be more of how normal people are, right? And so
Mm.
it could be a little bit of a combination of maybe Mr. Beast is growing up, maybe a little bit. He's not like a 20-year-old anymore. I think he's a little older than that now. And so he's starting to value things that probably when he started on YouTube wasn't something that he personally valued. But this fast moving explosions in combination with, you know, um, he made a comment that he spends a lot of time. He went back and watched his videos, and he spent a lot, and I've noticed this too when I've watched his shows too. He spends a lot of time yelling at his audience, um, because the environment that he's in, oftentimes he feels like he needs to do that so he can be heard, right?
Mhm.
And so it's creating this feeling that he's increasingly feeling uncomfortable with, and he's not feeling authentic. And I think that is going to cause a tectonic shift in YouTube, because what he does, people watch, right?
Right.
And they emulate what he's doing with his content. And I think this may be the beginning of kind of a significant change in what we see on YouTube, and even on like maybe a Twitter X too, where we see content that's a little bit more like what you've been doing for the last 20 years or however long that you've been doing this. So
Long content.
yeah, right. So yeah, so what was kind of your first experience at creating content? Was it on the radio, or I'm sure it was probably.
It was mostly radio. I mean, like, I wrote a book. I wrote a couple of books before that. Then got, and that's content creation. So I wrote, that's tough. I'm actually
Right.
finishing up my third book right now, and it should come out soon. We have a lot of work. I'm finishing a few things, and then gonna kind of figure out where we're gonna shop that at. But that was the first real content creation, then radio. And see, it's interesting what you were saying earlier about Mr. Beast being more authentic. And I'm very authentic in, my content, what I'm talking about, sort of. The thing that I've had trouble with, and this is something that I'm trying to figure out, and maybe many of you that are watching or listening have experienced this. I've seen other people in my industry get very personal, I guess, with their audience, which is great. But it's like they'll talk about like the makeup they use and stuff like that. And well, first off, I don't really feel like makeup's really that authentic, so that's a hard thing for me to even talk about. It's like, where do you kind of come in at, and then how much do people really want to see your day to day? I mean, do you
Yeah.
really want to see me driving a Starbucks? Do you really want? I mean, if you want to, that's great. But then there's a part of me that has this conundrum, which is like, how much of it do you want to know of me? Versus how much of it do I look like a narcissist, putting this out there? Like, you don't need to see me getting my hair done. You don't need to see me. I mean, like, how much of it do you really care about? And that's where I'm having the struggle, because I see content creators in the same genre as me, like in their bathroom mirror in the morning, taking out their curlers, talking about their makeup. And that's not what I feel comfortable doing, because I just don't think anybody has time to watch me do that. I feel like they have their own, getting ready time and their own makeup time and their own shower time. They got it on their own. Do they really want to see someone else do it? So that's my biggest question, is like, what would people want to really see if you're trying to be completely authentic, but obviously caring about the fact that you don't want to like bombard people with your personal life that they might not be interested. Where is that line? Where is that line? And that's questionable. And that's kind of what I've been kind of challenged with. I mean, does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it does. I mean, I've seen those videos too, like on TikTok or Reels or whatever, where
Mhm.
these girls put together these videos that is showing themselves as being kind of plain looking, but they use makeup to like make them into something else, right? So it's all about becoming something that you're actually not in real life, right?
Mhm.
Which is antithetical to the concept of being authentic, right? And then, but yet I see these trends also in online media of increasing people, not caring about their hair, not putting makeup on. They're holding a microphone up to their mouth and they're walking around the street creating content with no, overlays or graphics, kind of like what I'm doing here, which maybe isn't as authentic as what they're doing. Um, and I
Exactly.
tend to be attracted to that too. So, is
Mhm.
the sizzle worth the sizzle, or is it more just, like what I would do here is just kind of like go full screen and not really have all of these overlays and things like that. And is that better? I've seen trends on YouTube that are doing that too. There's no overlays. There's no graphics. It's just two people talking and that's it.
Yeah,
It's
that's where it's kind of interesting. So that's the conundrum. It's like, so like when you look at like Instagram stories or Facebook stories and you see people doing the thing that they're doing on a daily basis, like they shoot some video, right? Um I guess that's where I am, is I authentically want to give good content, help people, but it's like then there's a part of me that authentically I know that, there's a level of what people really want to see and a level that people don't really have time for. And then I feel like there's also a level of putting yourself out there and making yourself what I would say more transparent. But then I think that there's a level of there's kind of you got to really straddle, you straddle that line where it's like transparency versus um wow, you're putting so much out there. I mean, do people really want to see that? And so that's where I think the thing is like really finding that sweet spot where it's like, okay, I'm putting out good content. I'm putting it out there for real. This is genuine content. This is genuine real. This is genuinely me, but I don't feel like I'm compelled to have to push to follow some of these, because I do think that some people like they'll show you everything they eat. I mean, like I don't really know if I mean, I love everybody, but do I really need to see what you're eating for dinner? And do I really need to know? And do I really need to know where you get the makeup? And do I really need to know where you bought that dress out? I don't know. And so those are the things where I kind of feel like there's a fine line between what you feel comfortable with and not, and then I
yeah.
don't know. That
Yeah,
and
what you
that's a
raise
personal thing.
yeah, what you raise is a really interesting kind of additional layer to this is the psychology of everything here. Different demographic groups are motivated by different psychological triggers, right?
Mm,
And things that they connect with based on their generation and maybe their, hate to say it, but their mental health status, maybe their culture of where they come from and what they accept as normal for their age demographic, right? And I think it does vary. Like a Gen Z has different priorities in their mind than, let's say, a boomer does, right?
mhm,
And what they're looking for in content. And this just may be what we're seeing is kind of like the spectrum of expectations based on different demographics. It's like this contrast between radio and podcasting is really a demographic question, because what we're seeing on, at least on public radio and commercial radio, is the people that listen to that are typically much older than the people that are listening to
mhm.
podcasts. So the expectation of the content will be different because of that. And so do you ever think about those issues when you create content, of the age target that you're going after? And are you ever trying to go younger or older, or do you ever think about that?
That's really good question. And yes, you're right. On certain platforms, definitely some people, the I guess the medium demographic is younger. Not to say across the board, but a lot of people say, TikTok, medium demographic, and then you kind of look at that demographic breakdown, and you see a younger demographic. Um, Also on podcasting, when you look at a lot of podcasting, when I look at my demographic breakdown, it's much more men than women. If you look at radio, consecutively radio, especially AM long form radio, is more male driven, demographic.
Oh, interesting. On the
And
radio
then
side, it's different. Okay.
for very much so. I mean, I think men are more drawn to radio, and then if I look at my solid demographic, though, I mean, obviously you have the 25 to 35, whatever, but 35 to 44. I mean, it's basically a
Mhm.
25 to 55 kind of thing, and then you kind of inch depending on where you are. But like if you look at TikTok, it's very different.
Yeah.
If you look at Instagram, similar to that. And then you have to, and to me, it's like, I guess I do a lot of it just for the love of putting out the content because I genuinely care. But when you think about it, so some of you out there that are watching this are like, hey, well, I have products or services or whatever that you're selling or presenting, and it's only going to be afforded by a certain demographic. I don't look at it that way when I'm putting out content. Some people say that I should. But again, it's like, I think that's also something to be thought about too, is that who's like, are you on LinkedIn? Like some of you, maybe you focus more on LinkedIn heavy, because that's more of your demographic, but I kind of like give out the information to everybody. And then I think that when it comes to like, services or products or something like that, that's going to be certain people that are interested in only, there's going to be certain people that are going to connect with you. But I've also, as far as clients, around the world, I've had a lot of people come to me from YouTube, mostly a lot of people locally and non-locally radio. And then, you have your TikTok, I've seen a lot more from YouTube, TikTok, and podcasting and radio. Not so much sometimes in Facebook, or Instagram, if that makes sense for me. But I know that some people say that they get all their business from Instagram, and that's not my that hasn't shown to be true with my situation.
Interesting. Yeah, I wanted to also show your YouTube channel while we have you here, and so you can talk a little bit about how you think about your thumbnails and that topic. I'm sure you've spent a lot of time playing around with that to see what works and what doesn't work. I think most content creators are doing that today. And so what's your philosophy around thumbnails, and what do you think works these days as far as how it's presented and how you come up with the offering of the art?
Well, it's interesting because I've seen some comments in the comment section here today. There's James and some various other folks that have been commenting about how this is like logos and thumbnails are their thing, right?
Yeah.
I haven't figured it all out. If I figured it all out, I'd have 10 million views on each video, right? So obviously I'm trying to figure it out. And the title lead is interesting too, because you're close to something. And then how does somebody connect with that? And then sometimes it can be something just very generic that people connect with. Maybe it's because of the content they enjoy. So it's interesting because we've been working on that. The other day we were struggling with one and just struggling. And it took us a while to put it together, but it's like trying to figure out what the person's looking for. What is it going to, and so like that last one that we just did, tired their negative choices and how they affect you. I mean, there's so many different ways that could have gone and so many things that you could have put out there. And and then what do people want to see in that thumbnail? And that's another thing. And then, because I also know that a lot of times people want to see you, the person in the video. We've tried putting me in the video on the thumbnail, taking me out of the thumbnail, making just words, putting various like illustrations, putting very stressful illustration, non-stressful. I mean, like, it's like, what is it?
Yeah.
But again, it's like trying to figure out that sweet spot. And I don't know if we ever really figure it out. I don't know if I don't know if we do that or not, but I know that some people work really, really hard. And I probably, and it's interesting that this came up. I wish, like the clickbait. We definitely don't do clickbait on our stuff. We just don't do it. And maybe we should, because I get caught in that clickbait all the time. I mean, maybe we should. I should do it. Like I'll be like, "Ooh, that's interesting."
Yeah, it's these facial gestures that you're seeing a lot of thumbnails
yeah,
have
like,
right now. It's like, yeah, it's like,
it's like,
don't miss that.
Do this or
and
you
have
die.
this
I mean, you're like,
weird look on your
look at
face,
that.
right? Yeah.
But that's
Oh,
the thing. It's so hard to be. And again, it's like, yeah, you stay away from clickbait when you're being authentic, but yet you're like, well, why do all these people have all these views? And I don't know.
yeah, I mean, it must work to some degree, else people wouldn't be doing it, right? I mean,
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. But then
Does it
again,
make
then
it
I feel
right?
bad about doing it because then I don't want to do it, and then I've also realized that sometimes too, it's like I see people that are content creators, and I think I'm gonna go back to that. It's like we used to kind of like try to, dramatize try to, like recreate whatever content we're going for. So if somebody's like questioning themselves or whatever, it's like, but it's like, I think you just need to be consistent, just strong in the situation. But again, what do people connect with? And that's the struggle. And I think some people are really good at it. I mean, I'm sure that there are some people that just do this for a living full time,
Yeah.
thumbnail design. That's what they
Yeah.
do. And they
Well,
have probably a clear business model, and that's amazing. But we still have great times, and then we struggle.
yeah, I've seen a lot of experimentation in this with some content creators, and some of them just keep it really simple. Like they'll have like one image up there and maybe a couple of words big splashed across the, but I think it really depends on the content too. I mean, sometimes it's hard with this show to communicate really the scope of the depth of the content, because it's not like this show that's over an hour long really talks about one topic the whole show, right? Which a lot of YouTube videos do. They're very focused on trying to answer or tell a story around a very specific question, right? And that is the tug of war here, is that doing a live show, and I know you're also playing around with live too, is quite different. It's more like a radio show, right? It's more like a podcast than it is really what a lot of creators do, where they record and they do all this post production and they do all this editing and create this polished, professional looking video, right?
Right.
And it's quite different. I mean, this show is not a polished video that's in post production because it's being done live, right? So,
Right.
but it's also got advantages too, right? It's this audience connection, it's getting questions from the audience, it's the interactivity layer, which is what I love. And I've started out with that, taking calls at the radio station, and I know you have too. So, this kind of experience that we have around live is native to us, but to a lot of people it's not. I don't know. I mean, you've played in both areas. Which do you think you're strongest at?
I think honestly, brass tacks, live. Definitely. I think live, and I think live is more authentic anyway, because you're not, you
Well,
can't
it's
really hide.
inherently
You
more
know,
authentic, right?
yeah, you can't hide in live. You can't sit there and do and redo. It's like you can't be. Oh wait, hold on, guys, I screwed
Yeah.
that up. All right,
Well,
let me go
actually, I
back
say
and do
that on
that.
the show all the time. I say, "Oh, Ashley's not here yet. I'm gonna, she's coming," right? And
She'll
it's
be
like,
here soon.
it's not perfect like we see in a lot of YouTube videos where, it's like instant, changes of scenes, like with what, Mr. Beast does, right? It's like highly edited, and, maybe that's compelling, and it is YouTube becoming more like television? I think that's the other big trend
Mhm.
that we're seeing right now too. So as you think about what you did for Amazon Prime, maybe over a period of time, maybe that's gonna be considered the norm in podcasting, is those type of productions. But I do wonder about that because of that was an expensive production,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah, I'd like to do it. I definitely want to do it again. We put it on the back burner. We took a hiatus from it, based on because of COVID and all that stuff. And it was really, and we were like, do we do this? We did it live and we had everybody in studio and it was so cool and so connected. And then, you take that break because then everybody was like too scared to travel. And then how do you do this? And do we do a Zoom? Do we do this kind of thing? And so, yeah, I would definitely like to kind of reconnect with that. And it would be kind of interesting to do that on a YouTube type platform, what have you. I think that would be very cool. But you're right, and the thing is too is like it's interesting how we've all been trained. Like at such an early time, we've all been trained to your eye likes that edited thing. But I think nowadays people are going back to that. Oh wow, this is kind of the back, it's like not the underbelly, but kind of like the backstage situation. And the thing about the celebrity perspective, which I love so much about doing, is that it was unscripted.
Right.
And then my ass had to deal with being thrown in the hot seat at the end of each show. So like I can ask all these questions randomly. Nothing was scripted. We're there. People are being very honest, very genuine. I mean, people were very, very genuine in that show. Gosh, a lot, very, 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 very put some stuff on the line. And then I had to do the same thing. So I had to literally switch it up and I had to sit in the hot seat. And so if, And I like that because I really liked how everybody connected. And there were a few agents that came in, during the filming of that show, and they were very anti. This is I don't know what we're gonna do here. If this doesn't go right, we're not gonna sign the forms to allow this to air. And then, at the end of each, recording, oh my God, that was amazing. That was great. I mean, he did the best job or she did the best job. So it was a really great show. I'd like to bring it back, and definitely a concept like that, taking it, keeping the name and bringing it on YouTube or something like that could be very cool. Um, because it's not something that's scripted at all. And I like that. And I wouldn't call it a reality show at all, but it's just not scripted. And I think people are into that. I think that really connects. And I think because we're all connected, right? We're all connected. We're all at 1 degree from each other. I mean, we're all connected. And I think that actually brings out more of the universal human connection we have.
Yeah, I do think that it's interesting those trend lines that I'm seeing on YouTube happening more and more around in-person conversations being something that we're seeing more podcast like content being done now. I mean, if you look at a lot of the bigger shows that are on YouTube that are also podcasts, they tend to have like 2 microphones. It's not like this virtual thing like we're doing. It's like 2 people sitting facing each other with a microphone and the other one with a microphone, and then they have 2 cameras that switch back and forth, right? It's a
Mhm.
2-camera shoot of sorts, or maybe 3, depending on how many cameras that they have in the room. And that seems to be, a lot of the big productions are doing that. And that is a little bit more like what you did for Amazon Prime.
Mhm.
So maybe the expectations of that, maybe that can be a series that's available on Twitter X.
That's a
Who
great
knows?
idea.
Yeah.
That's a great idea. Yeah, because I think people want to see that. I think and I think like you're saying too, things are really changing, and it was funny. I was talking the other day with some of my friends, and we were talking about TV, and we were talking about like the shows, like back when some of them were a little older and some a little younger, but the shows that they watched. And you remember, and we all love some of these shows, but remember when the production company, like the station would have that big show that they pushed. I mean, we didn't really think that it was being pushed down our throats, right? But but it was. But that show that everybody watched. But would we really watch it if they didn't put it on every second to remind us that at 7 p.m.
Yeah.
on this night, this show's gonna be on. And I remember as a kid, growing up, and my dad would be like, "Oh, this show's coming on. We got to watch this show. This is the show," and every episode we watched, and it was, and they would tell you about the episode prior, and they would, you'd be waiting for that Thursday night to watch that show.
Right.
And things have changed so much since then, which is
Right.
so great that, there's so much content and there's so much availability. And I think that that's a good thing. I think that that's awesome, and I think that gives more people the ability to create content. But I also think, like you said, like maybe this Twitter option or this YouTube option gives people more of a platform as well. To
Yeah.
be able to kind of connect from there and to create that content.
Yeah, and I think it also has opened up the opportunities for, creators like myself and creators like yourself and many that are watching this to be able to express themselves and to have a relationship with the community and use this medium to reach people in a hopefully, as we see over time, a more authentic conversation. And I do think that the establishment is a little threatened by that a little bit.
Hmm.
I think it's safe to say, based on what we see happening in the media landscape right now. So, being authentic and real and truthful and honest and stuff like that may not be something that's as accepted now, because maybe that truth and honesty doesn't reflect a certain type of view that exists out there, and maybe it offends someone. So there's always a risk of being authentic and real and speaking your true self out there publicly, that it doesn't necessarily keep you from facing maybe some criticism for those views. And I think that's kind of always been the case. It's just
Hmm.
that millions of people haven't had a microphone in the
Right.
past, right? And now that's different now.
And
But
the options of going live and the options of being right there no matter where you are in the world, and being able to see that, because you're right, it was very limited for a very long time. What you saw, what you knew, the information you're getting, and
Right.
sometimes in some places it's still very limited, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, so you're giving people the option, and I think that's interesting, and I think that does change a lot of things. And then you have some people that it's like not even content creation; it's just news content, where somebody's right there, and they're right there, and they just boom, they go live right there, and you see something that you wouldn't have seen. And so I do think that it's like the world's getting smaller and smaller, and I think it's helpful in some ways, maybe not always helpful in some ways. But I do think that, it makes it where I think more and more of the authentic kind of message has to come out, and I think that's very true, because it's giving people the option. And like StreamYard is great. We use StreamYard, and I think it's the easier, more cleaner, option here, when you're doing these types of streams and these lives. And I remember back when that wasn't available, and, at all. I don't, and you didn't have that option. And so I think this is very helpful. And then I think there's just so much content out there. I mean, like everybody in this chat alone, I mean, I'm sure has a show, has content, has, whether it's a podcast or a live show, or they're on YouTube or whatever that is. And that's great. It's like having those resources to put that content out there, is really cool. And I think that's awesome. And I'd like to find more people to like co-create content with. That's something that I'm trying to venture into as well, because I have felt kind of like an island for a while. So, definitely want to find that. I mean, you and I have done some work together. And I've always respected everything that you've worked on. I would like to find, some other folks that we could really connect with, and kind of like, kind of co-create stuff with. I think that could be interesting as well.
Yeah, so as we kind of get to the end here somewhat of the show here, and I know that there's some things coming up with the giveaway, and also with a little bit of a step through a few Q&A questions toward the end of the program here, is so we don't go too long here, but just wanted to just share that I kind of think that we are in a unique time, and that people do have a voice now, and I think we all need to feel empowered to use that voice. And there is an opportunity for all of us out there. And is there anything, Ashley, that you wanted to share with maybe some aspiring creators out there about how they should stay the course, or if they how they should think about getting started, and should they start simply, or should they go all in? Is there any advice that you would want to share?
I guess the biggest advice I have, and it's something that a lot of people say that, I definitely can tell this because I've been through it, and it's definitely a genuine piece of advice here, is stick with it. If you're going to do it, stick with it. And, it's like I remember people would come to me and be like, I want to do a radio show. I want to do this. I said, just remember, this is something that you want to stick with. If you're going to do it, you got to do it.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so, being on since 2012, I mean, it is 2024. You stick with something and you do it. And I would start with whatever you start with. As a kid, I was always like, oh, well, I don't have this, or I need that. It's like, but, in reality, it's like, start with what you have, and it'll get better and better. You might not have, and over time, you might look back at some of those old videos and be like, oh my God. But, it is what it is. And I think you start with what you have, try to be consistent, don't beat yourself up, and try not to compare yourself to other people doing content, because you just can't. I mean, and because if you look at the real numbers, and you start looking like at YouTube numbers, and you look at people that have 100,000, subscribers, there's not a lot. But when you're looking at all these people on there, and you see all these people with 1 million subscribers, you start really feeling bad or sorry, or this is never going to happen for me, or,
Right.
oh, I haven't even gotten 1,000 subscribers. I mean, where am I? And you got to just believe in the fact that there's a lot of people out there. There's so many. I actually had all the numbers, and I actually had them written down, and gosh, Lee, I should have found that. I wrote this down, and you would have been surprised. I was actually really surprised by the numbers, by how many millions of people have YouTube, a YouTube channel. How many people have an active YouTube, as far as just like looking at content? How many are active YouTube content creators? How many people have gotten to this amount of subscribers? I mean, it's amazing. And you kind of, but what I've realized is when I looked at those numbers, for so long, I had believed something that wasn't real. And so I think when you get real, like go online, go to Google. If I had it right in front of my face, I don't want to like sit there and like be scrambling through all these papers and Rob's going to freak out because I'm scrambling through all these papers. But if you go online, you put like how many people have 100,000 subscribers, you would be really amazed by how few in the world. It's like under 400,000 then in the world. And then how many in the United States? It's like under 70,000. I mean, like, and then you look at how many people have a million and you think about, you start looking at that. If you can just start, and I like what Vicky said, if you can just start, that's the whole concept. And if we can just start doing it and creating that content and going there and saying, okay, I really connect with this. I feel confident about putting this out. Okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to put this out. I'm going to make a short, or I'm going to try this, and try not to beat yourself up too much, because I've also realized in life, the stuff that I was really, really good at was the stuff that I was like, I really believed in. It wasn't always the most polished of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't always the most like brainstormed, amazing thumbnail. Oh my God, this is amazing. But I do realize that I think people connect with content. And if they're going to learn something from you, that's where it's at. And so just remember, you're putting out content, you care about things, and also ultimately your heart and soul have to be in this. Like, you have to really want to do this. It can't be for glorification of anything. It can't be for fame. This has got to be really like, I really want to do it because it's a lot of work. And sometimes it really sucks. Okay. So you got to really want to do it and be like, I am in it for the long haul. I mean, there were nights like at radio, like, on Sunday nights you're at the studio and it's late and you're tired and you go home and your family's all asleep and, you're having a glass of wine and then you have the lights down because you don't want to wake anybody up. It's not glamorous. It's just not. And year after year and day after day and year after year. And I remember like there was like all these great shows that were coming on, like everything from Breaking Bad to everything I missed because my show was at the same time live. And so there's things that you're going to have to let go of. And then you're going to have to say, okay, I believe in this and I'm going to believe in this cause. I'm going to believe in doing this. And as long as your heart and soul's in it and you believe what you're doing, do it. And that's my advice. Do it. If you feel like that's not what you want to do, then think about it. Don't do something that you don't want to do. Because it's hard work. It's not easy. It's not glamorous. I mean, it just isn't. I mean, it might seem like, oh, wow, that person has 1 million followers. Oh, wow, that person just got a plaque. Yeah, I've been waiting for that plaque for years. I finally got it. And I mean, I haven't been able to open it because my whole team's not here. They haven't been here. But, I got it. Ah. I mean, I wanted this forever. And I would talk about it. Even my clients would be like, what is something you want? I was like, well, I want this, and they're like, what is that? What does that mean? I'm going to go Google that. What are you talking about? But it's like, yes, this is amazing. But for all that work. So it's not.
Right, well, you've been working on that for 12 years, right?
Well, not the YouTube thing, but a long time. I mean,
okay.
years and years and
long
years.
enough.
Years and years. I haven't gotten a Marconi Award. Where's that Marconi Award coming from?
I know, exactly.
I've been to those award ceremonies. I didn't get one. People that were in, at the same, in the same grouping were there. People in the same group, but I didn't get one. But it's like yeah, it's like being on the radio. You got to look past it. No, I didn't get a Marconi Award. I haven't got one yet. Okay, so. You got to look past that and say, hey, am I doing what I want? And it's like people in the cluster will win and you'd see them, because they're in the cluster stations and you're like, whoa, they got a Marconi. That's amazing. But that can't be the reason why you do it. It can't, because if it is, it's not worth it. I mean, really, it's just not. And if it's the money, it's not worth it. You got to really focus on, do you really love doing it? Do you care about people? Do you want to get the word out? And that's it. And then after that, some of the accolades may come. You might have some great clients from it. You might really connect. You might get a cool plaque for it, which I'm really happy about that. And I can't wait to open it when the team's here. But I think that's it. And so you got to look past all that stuff. And, the awards may come. They might not come. And a great actor, people that really love the craft, they don't think about the Academy Award, right? They think about, hey, I really want to be in that. I want to do that because this really connects with my soul. I want to do this role because it really connects with me. It's not about what I could get, because some of these people, some of the greatest actors of all our time have never even been nominated. Okay. Or they've been nominated and never won. ever. You know what I'm saying? So it's like you got to go in and say, hey, I really love it. And some of the best singers in the world, they don't have an album out. Some of the best singers in the world we've never seen on these these award shows. Some of the best singers are in church, or they're here, or they're there. And so it's like you have to just think about who am I, and what do I want to bring to the world, and how do I want to do it, and how do I want to promote it, and that's what really matters.
Yeah, I think those are all good takeaways from this show, and I appreciate you, Ashley, for being here and sharing all those years of experience and knowledge and struggle too. I think we both have had our fair share of struggle over the years as being content creators, and I think a lot of people in this audience that are watching this are either currently experiencing struggle or they're about to enter that realm very quickly. So if you're a content creator, it's going to happen to you. So I wanted to kind of like move to the next phase here before we get too late, is the giveaway. So let's pull up the giveaway. And if you have not entered yet, follow the instructions in the ticker below. Is enter #the_yard in your comment field of your viewing platform. And that'll get you entered into the giveaway. And let me pull that up on the screen and everybody can see that. And StreamYard does have this tool that's available to all of their content creators. It's StreamYard.com/giveaway. And this is a tool that you can use. You can create your own hashtag and share that with your audience, just like what I've been doing here with this show, and be able to raffle something off. So if you want to give away anything, it could be a training, or it can be a course or a book, or it can be whatever you want to do. And it looks like we're up to 30, it looks like 37 entries so far. So go ahead, I'll give you another minute or two, and I will mention that once I've hit the draw button and we have selected a winner, then send me an email. I just want to make sure that everybody knows this going in, with your mailing address, and we will mail you a Puddles duck and a StreamYard mug. So it's actually on the shelf behind me there. You can see behind me. I didn't pull it up this time, but I think it looks like we've got a few more people that have entered. And let me go ahead and start a little bit of music playing here, and we can celebrate the winner here. So I'm going to go ahead and pull the plug here. So if you haven't entered in, you may miss out here. So let's go ahead and hit the button. All right, it's exciting. Let's see who's going to win. All right, it's always fun to see. These are all the folks that have commented in the flow of the stream. Genesis 1, you are the winner of a Puddles duck and a StreamYard mug. So congratulations. I appreciate it. Send me an email with your mailing address, and send any comments that you want to me at all. This email address is public for anybody to use if they have a comment about the show, or they want to contribute anything, any ideas for show topics or things like that are important to you. I want to hear from you. And so, but it also is a great place for Genesis 1 to get a hold of me and get their giveaways. So thank you so much. And so let's go ahead and move on from that and get to the Q&A portion of the show. So let's do that, Ashley, and see if we can blast through those. I know we've had quite a few comments come in since I cut away, but let me see. We've gotten, it looks like, about 17 questions in here. That may be a lot. So we'll see if we can chew through these, or the ones that are most important. Let's see here. Let me go through this list. Let's see. Designing logos, thumbnails. Okay, this is kind of a fun one. James wrote this. Designing logos and thumbnails are the bane of my existence. I would say that some people are talented at creating art, and others use Canva.
That's true.
Yeah, I don't know what do you use, Ashley, to create your artwork?
Well, George does a lot of it. He does Photoshop.
Okay, have you played around with Canva at all?
I have. I
You
played
have?
around with
Okay.
Canva, Photoshop, everything. So definitely have experienced that for sure.
So that's what I use for this show. I use Canva. So
Oh,
what you
cool.
see in the graphics generally is a Canva generated solution here.
Very
So
cool.
like my thumbnails and things like that, which I just made a recent significant change to my thumbnail, and I think it's a little cleaner. I think the one I had before was a little cluttered with too much prompting about live shows and things like that. But
Okay.
let's go ahead and move on to the next question and see if we can hop through that. It says, "Hello, I have a question from Chris Newman. I was wondering if StreamYard can upgrade their system or code that will work in Facebook groups." Well, the unfortunate thing is this past week, Facebook decided that they were going to disable live streaming to Facebook groups. From what I gather, I'm certainly not an expert on Facebook and what they've chosen to do. Facebook also used to be a portal for podcasts too, but they decided to pull the plug on that too. So, they came in with a gusto and they left with a whimper, is my saying on generally on Facebook. So they tend to move away from things that they don't like, and I think you can say that to some degree about YouTube too. There was some news that came out about YouTube and podcasting this past week. If you wanted to go to the YouTube blog, you can actually find out more about the current situation with YouTube and podcasting. The VP of product for YouTube did a presentation on video where they talked about the podcasting platform. So if you do have an interest in that, pop over there and check it out. So let me see what the next question is. Let's see here. Okay. All right. So let's pull up this one. Uh, Pete asks, question, is there a way to live stream just audio? Well, I suppose if you didn't want to turn on your video, you could stream a blank screen to all the platforms and it would just be audio if you wanted to. I think that's possible. Ashley, I think if we turned off both of our videos, we could probably make this an audio only podcast. So
Yeah, and you put like an image up or something like that, right?
yeah,
Or
you
whatever.
could. I could just throw up a static image here and you could do just a live audio production here. I believe it's I don't think it's a commonly done thing on StreamYard per se, but I did spend many years doing live audio on, I used to work for Spreaker, just like Ashley was talking about earlier in the program. And I did live shows on Spreaker every week for like 3 or 4 years. So yeah, I mean, live audio is a thing. I know, Ashley, you've probably done live audio over the
For
years.
sure. For sure. For
So
sure.
it's definitely a thing, but it's probably not as popular now as it used to be. I mean, unless you're connected with a radio type of a program. But let's go to Pete George. It's if you can't be genuine to yourself, how can you be genuine to others? Well, I think you want to answer that question, Ashley? That kind of gets the psychology of all this, doesn't it?
Well, for sure. I mean, it's like being honest with yourself. I mean, like, I mean, the hardest thing is people, clients will be like, I can't believe they said that or did that or lied about that. And I'm like, okay, well, they lied to you, but don't you think they're also lying to themselves? I mean, so yes, definitely. In order to be genuine with others, you have to be real with yourself. And because otherwise, what do you really have? And so I definitely agree with you, Pete. I mean, it's got to start. It starts at home, right? So it's like, everything starts with us. The buck stops here. It's right here. And then whatever we have within here obviously radiates out. I mean, some people are good about putting on a persona, but I think over time a persona is figured out. So I think, yes, genuine, start with yourself and then you can actually be genuine with, it's like being like unconditionally loving yourself and really caring about yourself and having that feeling and that care and that self-care. You can actually give that to other people as well. But until you have that for yourself, you really can't do that for other people.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, Ashley, is that being genuine to yourself may not be appealing to others. So
Exactly.
there's a risk of that, right? So you probably have to think about how you're presenting yourself to others and put yourself in someone else's, you know, eyes or ears in how they perceive you. And that's difficult for people to do, though, Ashley. I wouldn't say that comes easily to people where they can actually see themselves through other people's eyes. I think that's a challenging thing.
It is.
Yeah. So, and then not to complicate this topic with Facebook, but Don McGuire writes, April 22nd came and went, and I was still able to stream to my Facebook group. Okay. I don't have an answer to that. They did come out and say that it was going to cease operations, so maybe they changed their mind. Actually, I don't know. It's odd. So I thought I was still streaming this show tonight to a Facebook group. That's actually a really good point, Don. Thanks. And let's see here. Next one is try and learn bikes. Great to be here and learn from the pros. Even they experience the same problems as the rest of us. Yeah. Well, that's part of us being genuine. I mean, I could get up here and blow a bunch of smoke at you about it, how everything is perfect when I do these live shows, but I'm not going to do that because guess what? I'm fully revealed here. I mean, I make mistakes all the time. So
yeah, everything's perfect. Sure.
Right. Right. No, nothing is perfect.
No, I love it. It's so true. We all have the same problems, and it's nice to be honest and authentic about it because it's real. We all have the same problems, and it puts in perspective. And the last thing, the thing I just despise the most is when people like try to they blow smoke up. Everything's perfect. Everything's great. You know, and the sad thing is you kind of believe it sometimes, and then all of a sudden you're like, wait, hold on. I know better than that. You know, but it can make us feel really bad when we think that everybody else's life is perfect and everybody else's content creation is perfect. When that is definitely not the case.
Yeah, and we're not any different than you. So, I mean, it's at the end of the day, we just maybe been doing it longer, and have been willing to accept all of the mistakes and not lost our self-confidence.
Exactly, not beat ourselves up anymore. But I'm sure there was a time when we did,
Right.
for sure.
Yeah, and Don McGuire writes, I came from syndicated radio. I like the StreamYard product. It allows listeners to see facial expressions and emotions. And I agree 100% with that. I mean, that is the reason to watch a video, is to pick up that nonverbal communication. I don't know. What's your thought on that, Ashley?
For sure. I mean, I like it. I mean, you can see people and it's great. And I'm sure it's a lot easier too, because I mean, there were so many times, you know, for so long, I mean, for at least 1,000 shows, right? You know, it was just audio. And so if you have somebody from a different place that's not in the studio with you, you know, and they don't know exactly your cadence or timeline, it's a lot easier. Somebody's looking at you on video, you know, to know when you're still talking.
Yeah, right. You know, and you can see things that you wouldn't hear on the radio because oftentimes, I know I did this a lot with my podcast. Is I would do a lot of editing to make it sound just right, you know. But then I do a show live every week with a co-host I've been doing for 12 years, and he staunchly disagrees with doing any editing.
Oh yeah, I don't do any editing. I'm like anti-editing on it, and maybe that's a little bit of like, you know, laziness, but I'm a, I don't know. But yeah, I have been
Truth comes out here, doesn't it?
yeah, direct, like, you know, at the radio show when I used to have to record it, when I couldn't go into the studio, direct to tape, direct, you know, like, and it would take me, you know, it was like a 44-minute show, and it takes me, you know, 45 minutes to record it. You know what I mean? Like I was, you know, but if I had somebody on the show that were like, hey, can I go back and change that? I'd be like, oh, okay. But but that's funny. So just a little 2 cents. I don't know. Part of it was just like, I get through it. And then the other part of it is, you know, let's just leave it raw. And the other part of it might be a little laziness on my part.
Yeah.
I'm
just like playing at both ends of the spectrum. I actually my own personal preference, but that's just because I'm a glutton for punishment, I think, because editing is one of the most tedious and drudgery tasks that you can do as a content creator. And then Metal Seer posted a comment. I just want to know enough about a presenter. Now she's talking about, I think, being able to see I'm assuming it's a woman, I'm not sure, but just know enough about the presenter to know if he or she is qualified to teach me something. And I think there is something to that, right? And I think, but I think that is only gained by actually taking a chance and listening and seeing if there is something there that's of value to you. And I guess there's no guarantee that someone is going to be qualified to teach you something. You may know something more about it than the person teaching it to you. So that's something that you have to decide in your own mind, I would imagine.
And I also like the point too, like, and I can see maybe, where it was coming from as well, is about, showing so much about somebody's personal life versus, hey, is that person qualified to give me advice? And I see what you're saying, because I think sometimes
Into the struggle, right?
right, the struggle. And so I think you're right. Sometimes all you need to know is what that person, kind of their background, and that's good enough. You don't need to know about what they eat or what they drink or whatever. And
We were talking about earlier.
I see their point.
Yeah, and it's an interesting question from the standpoint of having confidence that who you're listening to, you can believe or you can take guidance from. And I guess that is an interesting approach, especially if you're new, about establishing credibility and if maybe that's, I don't know if that's always the right thing to do, though. I mean, brag about yourself, because it does kind of come across that way sometimes, I guess. But then again, people judge people based on their experience, and I guess that probably makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So complicated question there. I appreciate it. Metal seer who's trying to see through metal, obviously. Question from Radio Commando, I think it is Commando, Mexico. It says, question is, in which podcast category falls a live streamed show, which is recorded live and then submitted as a podcast? Well, you're categorized by your topic. It's not going to be categorized as a live show per se, though some platforms may do that. Even if you look at like YouTube, YouTube does have a category on all their channel pages called live, right? So there is a distinction even in the YouTube platform about episodes that are live and episodes that are just videos. Now you can tag them in a playlist to have them available in both places, but there are some platforms that do single out live, and those are the ones that support live usually. Most podcast platforms don't really support live per se, but it is a functionality that's increasingly coming to podcasting through the Podcasting 2.0 initiative that is basically extending the tags that are used in RSS. Now I'm getting really geeky now, but the tags that are included in the RSS feed that's used to distribute, there's some new tags that are being proposed that will enable you to link to a live either YouTube show, or it could be a live HLS stream. It could be an audio or video stream that would be experienced inside of a podcast consuming app, not like a YouTube. I know it's a long answer to this question because it's a complicated one. And there is evolution and changes happening in the medium that will present more video opportunities, I believe. And that's why I'm kind of on the video side more now than ever before. So, and then let's go with Joanne Banco. I think you have to ask what's driving you. So I think that gets back to an earlier conversation that we have, is what's our motivation and what's our why for what we're doing as a content creator. So do you have any kind of a twist on that, Ashley, that's important? What's driving you?
I think just what drives you for sure. That's important. Where your direction is and what you really connect with is super important. It needs to come out in the content you create. Yeah.
Is it a kind of a compulsion that you have, or is it some sort of a kind of like an innate kind of tendency that you want to move towards? Is kind of how I start to think about that a little bit. It's like, well, what's your natural talent? What's your natural ability? What do you get excited about doing in your life? Can be a motivated driver of a lot of this stuff. Yeah. So I think we're getting down to the wire. I think we're going to have to pull the plug on this. I think we could probably go a 3-hour show, Ashley, but I don't know
exactly.
That's necessarily a good idea. Mutt Nuts, I appreciate you joining me again. You're always here, and I fully appreciate that. Your comment is, that is why Crazy is in my YouTube name. So yeah, Crazy Crafting is part of your name, because you never know what crazy mishaps may happen on my live show. I keep my videos and live raw and uncut. So I appreciate that. Thank you for the comment. And then I think we're getting toward the last of the, I think there's only one more or so here. It says, Gabriel writes, question, do any of you both know when will TuneIn accept podcasts or live streaming again? Well, for one thing, I didn't know that TuneIn had dropped podcasts. I do know that they supported podcasts for many years, but they had a very cumbersome process of getting it in there. And I know I worked really hard with the TuneIn team when I worked for Lipson to have them make that submission process a lot easier, but they never really followed through on their side. So, it's one of those things. And on the live streaming side, I think they kind of reserved that for commercial radio, unfortunately. So that's kind of where that stands. So not the best of news, I know. So, and then Metal Seer says remote guests using 2 windows is fine. StreamYard makes it so easy. So you can have multiple people manage your feed if you want to, or manage your show in StreamYard, or you can bring in someone from the guest app that's available on iOS. There's lots of options on how you can use this tool. And then the last one is Stampede Creations with Marilyn says, I use the giveaway tool without them needing to type a certain word or phrase. My followers love seeing their names on the screen. So there is a functionality. You are correct, Marilyn. There is a little button that you can check that doesn't require a hashtag. So you do have that option so anyone that enters a comment in the comment field will automatically get entered into the giveaway. So that is a true statement, and that's how it works. So you don't really have to do the hashtag thing unless you want to. So anyway, well, Ashley, thank you so much. Thank you everybody for joining me tonight. I think we had an amazing conversation here, Ashley. I think we helped a lot of people kind of think through some complicated aspects of being a content creator, as well as, just being a communicator and understanding the psychology of how to communicate. And so thank you so much. And thank everybody out there for spending so much time with us tonight. I know it's an hour and 40 some minutes, and that's a big commitment out of your day and your time. So Ashley, how can a viewer, watcher, follow you and what you're doing? I know I showed your YouTube channel, and I think I also have your website here that I'll pull up on the screen, but what do you have coming up? I know that you have an institute that you're working on, and then I know you have books and things like that. So what would you recommend that someone go or experience right now with what you're doing?
Definitely. Thank you. Rob, had a great time on the show. Great show. And I hope that we've given some good content to folks out there, going through that. It takes a village, honestly. And when you have knowledge and information that's powerful, it's great, and everybody can serve, helping other people. So thank you so much for everybody tuning in. I love the comments. I'm great to, hear from y'all, and I'm glad that, we can be helpful. Definitely, if you get a chance, if you're on YouTube, just check out Ashley Berges. The spelling's right there. You can go to Life Coach Ashley Berges or Ashley Berges, and you should be able to find my YouTube channel. Would love if you subscribe. That would be awesome. Definitely new content. We put out content about 3 times a week on YouTube. And also Facebook. If you go to Ashley Berges, Ashley Berges, you can go to Facebook and jump on there. We put out content 5 days a week. You don't have to look at it, but if you want to, you can. And we put out video content that's different actually from the YouTube content. So we change out a lot of content. The content on Facebook is all short form, so it's all under a minute. A lot of times on YouTube, we'll put out like 2 shorts on YouTube during the week, and maybe a long as well. But it's different content on those different. So definitely Facebook, Ashley Burgess, YouTube, Ashley Burgess. And then if you'd like to work with me or connect with me, you can check out the website, ashleyburgess.com. And also, if you have a question or thought, you can definitely comment on ashleyburgess.com. Go to that contact page, just click on it, and I will get back to you ASAP. So definitely, I will definitely return your email as soon as possible. So I really appreciate everybody. And Rob, thanks so much for having me on. And I love the show and love what you're doing. So thanks a lot for having me here.
Yeah, well, thank you. And I want to answer a question that just came in the chat about StreamYard having a thumbnail creation tool built into it, and it does. So it'll take your artwork that you have and will help you create a thumbnail. So you can add colors and add the overlays and things like that that you need to your thumbnail to create something that may work better than just a screenshot that you typically might get with a YouTube type of experience. So I think it's great, Ashley. Thank you so much for sharing so much tonight. And go visit Ashley's website and go follow her on YouTube. She talks a lot about kind of like personality disorders and lots of kind of deep psychology things that people are impacted in their relationships and things like that. So it's a lot of compelling content, and she spends a lot of time creating that. But thank you, everybody, and I appreciate all the comments in here. I know I didn't get to all of them. There's always too much else I could keep going, but I really appreciate you, and I'll be back next week at 7 p.m. Eastern for another episode of the podcast Tips with Rob Greenlee, and please support StreamYard and what we're trying to do on our StreamYard channel as well. So thank you so much, and have a wonderful evening, everybody. Thank you.